Aria Damon thought she'd found her perfect match when she married Jerry Niles, a charming entrepreneur with an art gallery empire and connections throughout the city. But after 3 years of marriage, she discovered the horrifying truth. Her husband wasn't just a businessman. He was a ruthless mafia boss who controlled half the city's underground operations. Terrified after witnessing something she shouldn't have, Aria fled to Portland, Oregon, changed her name back to her maiden name, and started rebuilding her shattered life as a freelance journalist. For 6 months, she kept her head down, convinced she'd escape the darkness. Then her divorce attorney called with unexpected news. Jerry had agreed to sign the papers. But there was one condition. He demanded to see her one final time. Just 1 hour. One conversation. One goodbye. Aria reluctantly agreed, flying back to Chicago for what she believed would be a formal, cold meeting. But when she walked into that penthouse suite, everything she expected crumbled. Jerry wasn't the intimidating crime lord she remembered. He looked devastated, hollow, like a man who'd lost everything. And then, as they sat across from each other, Jerry noticed something. The way Aria's hands trembled, the dark circles under her eyes she'd tried to conceal with makeup, the subtle wince when she moved too quickly. He leaned forward, his voice sharp with concern. "Aria, what aren't you telling me?" That single question unlocked a nightmare neither of them saw coming. Aria was sick, dangerously sick, with symptoms that baffled every doctor she'd seen. And when Jerry refused to let her leave until she got answers, an elite medical team made a chilling discovery. Aria wasn't just ill. She was being poisoned. Someone had been systematically poisoning her for months with arsenic, delivered through seemingly innocent sources. The prime suspect, Domenico Dom Castellano, Jerry's trusted enforcer and right-hand man, who believed Aria knew too much and needed to be eliminated before she could betray the family. To save Aria's life, Jerry must wage war against his own organization, hunt down Dom, expose a conspiracy that reaches the highest levels of the criminal underworld, and ultimately make an impossible choice: his empire or the woman he never stopped loving. What follows is a story of betrayal, deadly secrets, a mafia war that threatens to consume Chicago, and a man willing to burn his entire world to the ground just to keep one woman alive. She ran. She changed her identity. She vanished across state lines just to breathe again. But when her divorce attorney delivered the message, "He'll sign, but only if you meet him one last time," everything she'd rebuilt began to crack. She walked into that hotel suite expecting intimidation, threats, maybe even violence. Instead, the mafia boss she'd married looked broken. And then he asked the question that changed everything. "What aren't you telling me?" Because he saw what she'd been hiding. She wasn't just leaving him, she was dying, and someone in his organization was responsible. If you're hooked and want to see how this deadly love story unfolds, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what happens when a mafia boss discovers his wife has been poisoned by someone in his own family. 6 months ago, Aria Damon made the most terrifying decision of her life. She walked away from her husband, not because he was cruel, not because he didn't love her, but because she discovered that the man she'd married was a lie. Jerry Niles wasn't just a successful entrepreneur with an art gallery empire. He was a mafia boss who controlled Chicago's criminal underworld through violence, intimidation, and blood. When Aria accidentally witnessed a conversation she wasn't meant to hear, a conversation about eliminating witnesses and covering up murders, she knew she had only one choice: run. She fled to Portland, changed her name back, and tried to disappear into a new life as a journalist. For 6 months, she looked over her shoulder, wondering if Jerry would come for her, wondering if she'd ever truly be free. Then her attorney called with shocking news. Jerry agreed to sign the divorce papers. No fight, no demands, just one condition. He wanted to see her one final time. Aria walked into that Chicago penthouse expecting the cold, dangerous man she'd fled from. Instead, she found someone broken, vulnerable, a man who looked like he'd been hollowed out from the inside. And then Jerry asked the question that would shatter both their worlds. Aria, what aren't you telling me? Because he saw it. The trembling hands, the weight loss, the exhaustion she couldn't hide. That question opened the door to a nightmare neither of them could have imagined. A deadly conspiracy, a poisoning plot, a war within the mafia itself, and a love that refused to die even when death came knocking. He brings in elite specialists despite her protests. The hotel suite was exactly what Aria expected. Cold, impersonal, expensive. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Chicago's glittering skyline, a city she'd once called home and had fled from like a woman escaping hell itself. She stood in the center of the room, her arms wrapped around herself, trying to stop the trembling that had nothing to do with fear and everything to do with the exhaustion that had become her constant companion. 6 months. It's been 6 months since I left, since I ran. The door opened behind her. Aria didn't turn around immediately. She needed one more second to steel herself, to remember why she'd left, to armor herself against whatever manipulation or intimidation was about to come. Hello, Aria. His voice hit her like a physical force, deep, familiar, carrying an ache she hadn't expected. She turned slowly. Jerry Niles stood in the doorway, and for a moment, Aria forgot how to breathe. This wasn't the man she'd left. The Jerry she remembered had been immaculately dressed, radiating power and control, his dark eyes sharp and calculating. The man before her now looked broken. His suit was perfect, yes, but there were shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. His jaw was tight with tension, and when their eyes met, she saw something that made her heart clench despite herself. Pain. Jerry, she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just stood there. Two people who'd once shared everything, now separated by an ocean of secrets and lies. You look, Jerry started, then stopped, his brow furrowing. His eyes swept over her, and Aria saw the exact moment realization hit. Aria, are you okay? I'm fine, she said automatically, the lie she'd told 100 doctors slipping out effortlessly. No. Jerry crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. No, you're not. Aria stepped back, her heart racing. Jerry, don't! How much weight have you lost? His voice was sharp now, not with anger, but with concern that bordered on panic. 20 pounds? 25? That's none of your business anymore. Your hands are shaking. I'm nervous. Anyone would be nervous. And your eyes. Jerry reached out, stopping just short of touching her face. There are dark circles you tried to cover with makeup. Your skin is pale, too pale, and you winced when you turned around. Aria's breath caught. She'd been so careful to hide it all. What aren't you telling me? Jerry asked quietly. And in that question was everything: concern, fear, and something that sounded dangerously close to love. The armor she'd built around herself cracked. She swallowed hard. I've been sick for a while now. Jerry's face went white. How sick? I don't know. The doctors don't know. They've run every test imaginable, and they can't figure out what's wrong with me. The words tumbled out faster now, 6 months of fear and frustration pouring out. It started about 2 months before I left. Just fatigue at first. I thought I was working too hard. Then the nausea started. Then my hair started falling out. Then the nerve pain and the trembling and… Stop! Jerry's voice was firm, but his hands were shaking now too. Stop. Sit down before you collapse. He guided her to the sofa, and Aria was too tired to resist. She sank into the cushions, and the relief of sitting down was so profound, she almost cried. Jerry knelt in front of her, his dark eyes searching her face. Have you seen specialists? Yes, 3 different specialists. They've tested me for everything: autoimmune disorders, thyroid problems, vitamin deficiencies, infections, cancer. Cancer? The word came out strangled. They ruled it out. Whatever this is, it's not cancer. Jerry was quiet for a moment, his jaw working. Then, how bad is it right now? The truth, Aurea. She closed her eyes. Some days, I can barely get out of bed. I've had to cut back my freelance work because I can't focus. Last week, I collapsed in my apartment and couldn't move for 2 hours. Jesus Christ! Jerry stood abruptly, pulling out his phone. That's it. We're not signing anything until you see my doctors. Your doctors? Jerry, You haven't seen my doctors. He was already dialing. I have a team, the best in the country. Specialists who don't ask questions and can run tests most hospitals don't have access to. I don't want your help, Aurea said. But even as she said it, she knew it was hollow. She was desperate. Desperate enough to accept help from the man she'd run from. Jerry looked at her, and in his eyes she saw something that made her chest ache. I don't care if you want it. You're getting it anyway. He brought the phone to his ear. Because whatever is happening to you, whatever is making you sick, we're going to figure it out, and we're going to fix it. Wait, Aurea whispered. Why do you care? I left you. I ran away without explanation. I filed for divorce. Jerry lowered the phone for just a moment, his gaze locking with hers. Because I never stopped loving you. Not for 1 second. Then he turned away, barking orders into the phone, and Aurea sat on that expensive sofa, feeling like her entire world had just tilted on its axis. What have I gotten myself into? Dr. Vivian Torres arrived at the suite within 30 minutes, bringing with her enough medical equipment to stock a small emergency room. She was a striking woman in her late 30s, sharp features, dark hair pulled back in a severe bun, and eyes that missed absolutely nothing. She set up her equipment with clinical efficiency while Jerry stood by the window, arms crossed, radiating barely controlled tension. Ms. Damon, Dr. Torres said, her voice professional but not unkind. I'm going to need your complete medical history and a list of every symptom you've experienced, no matter how minor. For the next hour, Aurea answered questions while Dr. Torres conducted examination after examination. Blood draws, neurological tests, reflex checks, skin analysis. The doctor worked with methodical precision, occasionally making notes but offering no commentary. Jerry didn't leave. He stayed by the window, watching, and every time Aurea glanced at him, she saw the same tightly controlled fear in his eyes. Finally, Dr. Torres packed up her equipment. I'm having these samples sent to 3 different labs for analysis. I want comprehensive toxicology screens, heavy metal panels, complete metabolic workups, and genetic testing. How long? Jerry asked. 48 hours for preliminary results, maybe 72 for the complete panels. I need it faster. Mr. Niles, I understand your urgency, but Vivian, Jerry's voice was dangerous now. I need it faster. Call in every favor you have. I don't care what it costs. Dr. Torres looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. 24 hours. But I can't promise miracles. I'm not asking for miracles. I'm asking for answers. After Dr. Torres left, silence filled the suite. Aurea felt drained, exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. You should stay here tonight, Jerry said quietly. I have a hotel room. You should stay here. He turned to face her. I have a second bedroom. You'll be comfortable, and if something happens during the night, I'll be here. Jerry, that's not a good idea. I don't care if it's a good idea. He crossed the room and sat down across from her. Aurea, I know you don't trust me. I know you have every reason not to. But right now, you're sick. You're in a city where you have no support system, and you can barely stand without swaying. So please, please, let me help you. Aurea wanted to argue, wanted to maintain her independence, her boundaries, her anger at everything he represented. But she was so tired. Okay, she whispered, just for tonight. 24 hours later, Dr. Torres returned. Aurea had spent the time in a fog of exhaustion, sleeping more in one night than she had in the past week combined. Jerry had been respectful, giving her space but checking on her regularly, bringing food she barely touched. Now they sat in the living room, Aurea on the sofa, Jerry beside her, close but not touching, while Dr. Torres spread papers across the coffee table. The doctor's expression was grim. Tell me, Jerry said. The good news is we found the cause. Dr. Torres looked at Aurea. Ms. Damon, you're suffering from chronic arsenic poisoning. The words didn't make sense at first. Aurea stared at her. What? Arsenic, a heavy metal toxin. Your blood work shows elevated levels consistent with exposure over an extended period, approximately 6 to 8 months based on the tissue samples. That's impossible, Aurea said. How would I have been exposed to arsenic? That's the question. Dr. Torres pulled out another report. Arsenic poisoning isn't common in developed countries unless it's intentional. It's not something you accidentally ingest from contaminated water or food in the United States, which means someone poisoned her. Jerry's voice was flat, deadly. Someone has been deliberately poisoning her. The room seemed to tilt. Aurea gripped the arm of the sofa, her mind racing. That can't be right, she said. That doesn't make any sense. Who would want to… She stopped. Who would want to poison me? She looked at Jerry and saw the same terrible realization dawning on his face. It's someone from my world, he said quietly. Someone in the organization who saw you as a threat. But I didn't know anything. I never tried to… It doesn't matter what you actually knew. It matters what they thought you might know. Jerry stood, his hands clenched into fists. Someone decided you were a liability. And they've been trying to eliminate you. For 6 months? Aurea's voice rose. They've been slowly killing me for 6 months? Arsenic is particularly insidious, Dr. Torres said gently. Small doses over time mimic natural illness. Most doctors wouldn't even think to test for it unless they had reason to suspect poisoning. Jerry turned to the doctor. Can you determine how it was administered? Based on the pattern and consistency of exposure, I'd say it was likely delivered through something Ms. Damon consumed regularly. Daily vitamins, coffee, a specific food item she ate routinely. We'd need to test everything from her apartment in Portland to be certain. Do it. Send a team tonight. Jerry, Aurea started. Don't. He spun to face her, and the fury in his eyes was terrifying. Not fury at her, but fury for hers. Don't tell me this is overreacting. Don't tell me to let it go. Someone in my organization has been poisoning my wife for 6 months, and they're going to pay for it in blood. I'm not your wife anymore, Aurea whispered. Jerry's jaw tightened. You'll always be my wife, and I will find whoever did this, and I will make them suffer in ways they can't imagine. The forensic team Dr. Torres sent to Portland worked through the night. By morning, they had their answer. Aurea's daily multivitamin supplement, a bottle she'd bought from a health food store 2 months before leaving Chicago and had been refilling from the same brand, had been laced with arsenic. Someone had carefully replaced the contents of her vitamin capsules with a mixture that included just enough arsenic to make her sick without raising immediate red flags. The tampering happened to the original bottle, Dr. Torres explained over video call. Whoever did this had access to your apartment in Chicago before you left. They knew you took these vitamins daily. Jerry's face was stone. They planned this. They knew she was going to leave, and they wanted her sick or dead before she could go to authorities. But I wasn't going to go to the authorities, Aurea protested. I just wanted to disappear. They didn't know that. Jerry's voice was cold. In our world, when someone runs, we assume they're going to talk. Then why not just kill me outright? Why the poison? Because a clean disappearance raises questions. A death that looks like natural illness? Jerry shook his head. That's smart. That's patient. That's someone who thinks long-term. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Leonard. My office, now. He hung up and turned to Aurea. Leonard Briggs is my consigliere, my advisor. If anyone can figure out who in the organization had the means and motive to do this, it's him. 20 minutes later, Leonard Briggs walked into the suite. He was a distinguished man in his early 50s with salt and pepper hair and the demeanor of a philosophy professor rather than a mafia consigliere. When he saw Aurea, surprise flickered across his face, followed quickly by concern. Mrs. Niles, he said carefully, I wasn't aware you were in Chicago. She's being poisoned, Jerry said bluntly. Someone in our organization has been systematically poisoning her for 6 months with arsenic. I need a list of everyone who had access to her apartment, who knew her routines, and who had reason to want her dead. To his credit, Leonard didn't waste time with shock or denial. His expression hardened and he pulled out a tablet. When did the poisoning begin? Approximately 8 months ago, Dr. Torres said, before Mrs. Niles left Chicago. So we're looking at someone who knew she was leaving, or suspected it. Leonard's fingers moved across the screen. Access to the apartment would have been limited to security personnel, cleaning staff, and anyone with executive-level clearance. Dom, Jerry said. Leonard looked up sharply. You think Dom is responsible? He's always been paranoid about security, always convinced someone's about to betray us. And he knew Aurea was uncomfortable with the business long before she left. Domenico Castellano, Leonard said to Aurea, is Jerry's head of security and enforcement. He's thorough. Perhaps overly so. He's paranoid, Jerry corrected, and he has access to everything. including the kind of chemicals needed to weaponize arsenic. Jerry, you can't accuse Dom without concrete proof. He's been with you for 10 years. He's loyal. He tried to kill my wife. Jerry's control snapped. He slammed his hand on the table, making everyone jump. Loyalty means nothing if he decided Aria was a threat. Silence fell over the room. Finally, Leonard spoke quietly. If it was Dom, he won't confess easily. He'll deny everything, and he has connections throughout the organization. If you accuse him without proof, you could start a civil war. Then we get proof. Jerry turned to Dr. Torres. Can you trace the specific source of the arsenic, where it came from? Possibly. Industrial-grade arsenic is tracked. But there are ways to obtain it through chemical supply companies if you have the right access. I can reach out to some contacts and see if anyone in your organization made unusual purchases in the past year. Do it. Jerry looked at Leonard. I want surveillance on Dom. Every move, every conversation, every contact. But subtle. I don't want him knowing we're watching. Jerry, if you're wrong about this, I'm not wrong. Jerry's voice was absolute. He's the only one with means, motive, and opportunity, and I'm going to prove it. Over the next 3 days, Aria watched Jerry transform from the man she'd left into something far more dangerous. He became methodical, cold, calculating. He called in markers, pressed contacts, and slowly built a web of evidence against Domenico Castellano and security footage showing Dom entering Jerry's residential building when Jerry was out of town. Financial records revealing purchases of industrial chemicals through a shell company. Intercepted phone calls where Dom discussed the Aria problem with associates. The evidence was damning, and through it all, Aria felt something shift inside her. This was the man she'd run from, the mafia boss capable of ruthless violence. But now that ruthlessness was directed at protecting her. Every cold order, every calculated move, every threat was designed to keep her safe. It was terrifying, and it was also the most cared for she'd felt in her entire life. On the 4th day, Jerry found her standing at the window, looking out at the city. We have enough, he said quietly. Enough to prove Dom did this. Aria turned to him. What happens now? I call a commission meeting, present the evidence to the heads of the 5 families, and I demand justice. Will they give it to you? Jerry's smile was cold. When they see what he did, when they understand he acted without approval, that he poisoned the wife of a family head, they'll sanction his execution. Aria should have been horrified, should have recoiled from the casual discussion of murder. Instead, she felt something dark and satisfying bloom in her chest. Good, she whispered. Jerry looked at her, surprise flickering in his eyes. Aria, he tried to kill me. Her voice was steady, strong. For 6 months, he slowly poisoned me, watched me suffer. So yes, Jerry, I want justice. I want him to pay. Something shifted in Jerry's expression. Pride, maybe, or recognition. Then you'll get it, he promised. I swear to you, you'll get it. Before the commission meeting, Jerry did something Aria didn't expect. He brought her to see Dom. They met in a secure location, a warehouse on the industrial edge of the city that Jerry's organization used for private business. Dom was already there, leaning against a car, smoking a cigarette. When he saw Jerry approach with Aria at his side, his expression barely changed. Boss, Dom said, nodding. Didn't expect to see you today. We need to talk, Jerry said. Dom's eyes flicked to Aria, and she saw it. Just a flash of something that might have been surprise. or satisfaction. About? About the fact that you've been poisoning my wife for the past 6 months. The cigarette stopped halfway to Dom's mouth. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Dom laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. That's a serious accusation, boss. You got proof? Security footage, financial records, witness testimony. Phone intercepts. Jerry's voice was deadly calm. I have everything, Dom. Every move you made, every chemical you bought, every moment you thought you were being careful. I have it all. Dom's expression hardened. He dropped the cigarette and crushed it under his heel. So what's this? You bringing her here to make me feel bad? To apologize? I brought her here so she could look you in the eye, Jerry said, and tell you herself what's going to happen to you. Dom's laugh was uglier now. The little wife wants to play tough? That's rich. Aurea stepped forward before Jerry could stop her. You tried to kill me, she said, her voice steady despite the fear racing through her veins. You poisoned me. You watched me get sick. And you thought you'd get away with it. I did it for the family, Dom said. You were a security risk. You knew too much. You were going to talk, and you would have destroyed everything we built. I never knew anything, Aurea's voice rose. I didn't want to know. I just wanted to leave. Doesn't matter. In our world, you don't get to just leave. You know that, boss. Dom looked at Jerry. She was a liability. I made a judgment call. Without my authorization, Jerry said coldly, you poisoned my wife without consulting me, without approval from the commission. You acted on your own, and now you're going to face consequences for it. Dom's hand moved toward his jacket. In one fluid motion, Jerry drew his own weapon and aimed it directly at Dom's head. Don't, Jerry said softly. Don't give me an excuse to kill you right here. Right now. You're going to face the commission, Dom. You're going to answer for what you did. And then you're going to die knowing you failed. Dom froze, his hand still halfway to his weapon. You failed, Aurea said. And this time her voice was strong, fierce. I'm still alive. I'm getting treatment. I'm getting better. And you? You're done. She stepped closer until she was just a few feet away from the man who'd tried to murder her. I want you to know something, she said quietly. When they execute you, I'm going to be there. I'm going to watch. And I'm going to feel absolutely nothing but relief that you're gone. Dom stared at her, and for the first time, she saw genuine fear in his eyes. Let's go, Jerry said, pulling Aurea back gently. The commission meets tomorrow. As they walked away, Dom called out, You think you've won? You think this ends with me? You're wrong, boss. This goes deeper than you know. Jerry didn't turn around, but Aurea felt ice slide down her spine. This goes deeper than you know. What did that mean? The commission meeting took place in a private dining room in one of Chicago's most exclusive restaurants. The kind of place where privacy was guaranteed and questions were never asked. 5 men sat around the table, the heads of Chicago's major crime families. Jerry was one of them. The others, Thomas Greco, Vincent Rossi, Samuel Park, and Anthony DeMarco, controlled different territories and operations throughout the city. Aurea stood behind Jerry, Leonard at her right. Dom stood across the room, flanked by 2 guards. Thomas Greco, the eldest and most respected of the 5, called the meeting to order. We're here because Jerry has brought serious accusations against Domenico Castellano. Jerry, present your case. For the next 30 minutes, Jerry laid out everything. The medical evidence, the forensics, the security footage, the financial records, the intercepted communications, everything that proved, beyond reasonable doubt, that Dom had systematically poisoned Aurea. When he finished, silence filled the room. Then Vincent Rossi spoke. "This is disturbing. Domenico, what's your defense?" Dom's jaw was tight. "I did what I had to do to protect the family. She was a security risk. She would have talked." "That wasn't your call to make," Anthony DeMarco said sharply. "If you believed Mrs. Niles was a threat, you should have brought it to the commission." "That's protocol." "There wasn't time. There's always time for protocol." Thomas Greco's voice cut through the room like a whip. "You don't get to unilaterally decide to eliminate the wife of a family head, Domenico. That's not how we operate. That's chaos." "I was protecting—" "You were protecting yourself," Jerry said coldly. "Because you knew if I found out what you were planning, I'd kill you myself." Dom's expression twisted. "You want to know the truth? Fine. Yes, I poisoned her. Yes, I tried to eliminate her, but I wasn't working alone." The room went deadly silent. "What did you say?" Jerry's voice was soft, dangerous. Dom looked around the table. "You think I could have pulled this off by myself? I had help from people in this room." Thomas Greco stood slowly. "That's a very serious accusation, Domenico. You'd better have proof." "I have plenty. Files, recordings, evidence of who helped me, who funded the operation, who wanted Mrs. Niles dead just as much as I did." Dom's smile was vicious. "You want to execute me? Fine. But I'm taking others down with me." Chaos erupted. The family heads were on their feet, shouting accusations and denials. Guards drew weapons. The room teetered on the edge of violence. And then Aurea spoke. "Stop!" Her voice wasn't loud, but something in it cut through the noise. Everyone turned to look at her. "If there are others involved," she said calmly, "then we need to know who they are. Killing Dom now solves nothing. We need answers first." Thomas Greco studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "She's right. Domenico, you'll be held in custody while we investigate your claims. If you're telling the truth, we'll deal with the conspirators. If you're lying to save yourself—" His smile was cold. "Then your death will be particularly unpleasant." "No," Jerry said. Everyone looked at him. "No," Thomas repeated. Jerry stood, his expression like carved stone. "Dom dies today. Now. Whether there are others involved or not. He tried to murder my wife. That's a death sentence by our own laws. If there are conspirators, we'll find them afterward. But Dom doesn't get to negotiate his survival by dangling information." "Jerry," Leonard started. "He dies today." The finality in Jerry's voice left no room for argument. Thomas Greco looked around the table at the other family heads. One by one, they nodded. "Very well," Thomas said. "The Commission sanctions the execution of Domenico Castellano for the attempted murder of Aurea Niles without authorization. The sentence will be carried out immediately by the injured party." He looked at Jerry. "Do you want to do it yourself?" Jerry's eyes never left Dom. "Yes." The execution took place in the warehouse behind the restaurant. Aurea stood with Leonard as Jerry approached Dom, who was on his knees, hands bound behind his back. "Any last words?" Jerry asked. Dom looked up at him with hate-filled eyes. "This isn't over. When they find out what you did—" "Who?" Jerry demanded. "Who helped you?" Dom smiled. Figure it out yourself. Jerry drew his weapon. The shot echoed through the warehouse. Dom's body crumpled to the floor. And just like that, it was done. Jerry stood over the body for a long moment, then turned and walked directly to Aria. Without a word, he pulled her into his arms. She expected to feel horror, expected to be disgusted or frightened. Instead, all she felt was relief. The man who'd tried to kill her was gone. "It's over," Jerry whispered against her hair. But Aria remembered Dom's words. "This goes deeper than you know," and she wondered if anything was truly over at all. Detective Rachel Kimura had been investigating Jerry Niles for 3 years. 3 years of surveillance, undercover operations, and building a case that would finally bring down one of Chicago's most powerful crime families. She'd gotten close, so close she could taste it. And then everything changed. When Jerry walked into the FBI field office the morning after Dom's execution and asked to speak with her specifically, Rachel thought it was a trap. "I want to make a deal," Jerry said, sitting across from her in the interrogation room. Rachel studied him carefully. "You want to make a deal? You, Jerry Niles, the man who spent the last decade building a criminal empire?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because someone in my organization tried to murder my wife. And when we executed the person responsible, he claimed he wasn't working alone. I need to find out who else was involved, and I need resources I don't have access to. Resources the FBI does have." Rachel leaned back in her chair. "And what exactly are you offering in exchange for these resources?" Jerry met her eyes. "Everything. Full cooperation. Complete transparency into my organization's operations. Names, dates, financial records, everything you'd need to dismantle not just my family, but all 5 crime families in Chicago." Rachel felt her heart rate spike. This was it. This was the break she'd been waiting for. "And what do you want in return?" "Immunity for me and my wife, witness protection, new identities, and you help me find out who tried to kill Aria." "Why should I believe you're serious about this?" Jerry pulled a flash drive from his pocket and slid it across the table. "That contains detailed financial records from the past 5 years. Wire transfers, shell companies, payment structures. Everything you'd need to start building cases against 24 high-level criminals. It's a good faith gesture." Rachel stared at the flash drive. "I need an answer," Jerry said. "My wife is still recovering from arsenic poisoning. Someone wanted her dead, and I have reason to believe they might try again. I'll give you everything you want if you help me keep her safe and find out who else was involved in the conspiracy." Rachel picked up the flash drive. "I need to consult with my superiors. You have 24 hours. 24 hours later, Rachel sat down with Jerry and Leonard Briggs in a secure FBI conference room. "We have a deal," she said. "Full cooperation in exchange for immunity and protection. But there are conditions." "Name them," Jerry said. "First, you provide testimony against everyone in the organization. No exceptions, no protected parties." "Agreed." "Second, you and Mrs. Niles submit to complete debriefing. Everything you know about the organization's operations, structure, and personnel." "Agreed." "Third, once you enter witness protection, you cut all ties with your former life. No contact with associates. No communication with family members who are involved in criminal activities." Jerry hesitated for just a moment, then nodded. "Agreed." "Good." Rachel opened a file folder. "Now, let's talk about who wanted your wife dead." Over the next several hours, they went through everything Dom had said, every hint he'd dropped about conspirators. Rachel's team pulled phone records, email communications, and financial transactions, looking for patterns. And slowly, a picture emerged. Dom made several encrypted calls to a burner phone in the weeks leading up to the poisoning, Rachel said, pointing at a chart on the wall. We traced that phone to a series of locations that correspond with meeting sites used by Vincent Rossi's organization. Jerry's expression darkened. Vincent was involved? It looks that way. We found wire transfers from a shell company linked to Rossi's operations to a company that Dom used to purchase the arsenic. The timing matches perfectly. Why would Vincent want Aurea dead? Leonard asked. Maybe he saw an opportunity, Rachel suggested. If Mrs. Niles died and Jerry was devastated, Vincent could have moved into the power vacuum. Or maybe he genuinely believed she was a security threat and thought he was helping Dom protect the organization. Either way, he's guilty, Jerry said coldly. We need more proof before we move, Rachel cautioned. Right now, this is circumstantial. We need something concrete. Jerry turned to Leonard. Can you reach out to Vincent? Feel him out, see if he says anything incriminating? Leonard nodded slowly. It's risky. If he suspects we're investigating him, he's already suspicious, Jerry interrupted. After Dom's execution and what Dom said about conspirators, everyone in the commission is watching their backs. Vincent knows we're looking. The question is whether we can get him to make a mistake. The trap was set 3 days later. Leonard arranged a private meeting with Vincent, claiming Jerry wanted to discuss organizational restructuring after Dom's death. Vincent agreed, probably because refusing would have looked even more suspicious. The meeting took place in a restaurant owned by neutral parties. Jerry and Vincent sat across from each other, while Leonard and Vincent's consigliere, Marco Rinaldi, sat nearby. FBI agents listened to every word through concealed recording devices. Thank you for meeting with me, Jerry said. Of course. Dom's death left a significant gap in your security structure. If you need assistance... Actually, I wanted to talk about something else. Jerry leaned forward. Before he died, Dom claimed he wasn't working alone. He said others were involved in poisoning Aurea. Vincent's expression didn't change. I remember. Do you have any idea who he meant? I have some theories. Financial records showing unusual transactions, calls to burner phones, connections that don't make sense unless someone was coordinating with Dom. That's concerning, isn't it? Jerry smiled coldly. Here's what I'm wondering, Vincent. If someone helped Dom, were they trying to help him eliminate a security threat? Or were they trying to eliminate me through my wife? Vincent's jaw tightened. I don't follow. Don't you? Think about it. If Aurea died and I was destroyed by grief, maybe someone saw an opportunity to take over my territory, my operations, my connections. Jerry, if you're accusing me, I'm not accusing anyone yet. Jerry stood. But I will find out who was involved. And when I do, Dom's death will look merciful compared to what happens to them. He walked out, leaving Vincent sitting there with visible sweat on his forehead. 30 minutes later, in the FBI surveillance van, Rachel smiled. He's panicking. Look at his hands. He's texting someone. They watched as Vincent pulled out his phone and began typing furiously. Can you intercept those messages? Jerry asked. Already on it. Rachel's tech specialist was typing rapidly. He's using an encrypted messaging app, but we can crack it. Give me... Got it. She turned the screen so Jerry could see. The messages were from Vincent to someone identified only as M. He knows something. We need to move up the timeline. If he traces the finances, we're done. Can you handle the problem or not? Who's M? Jerry asked. Rachel pulled up another file. Based on known associates and communication patterns, we believe it's Marco Rinaldi, Vincent's consigliere. He was probably the one who actually arranged the poison delivery. Jerry's fists clenched. So Vincent and Marco. Anyone else? We're still investigating, but based on the evidence we have so far, it looks like it was just the two of them working with Dom. Then we have what we need. We do, Rachel agreed. Enough to arrest both of them on conspiracy charges. With your testimony, we can put them away for decades. Jerry looked at her. I want to be there when you arrest them. That's not, I want to be there, Jerry repeated, his voice leaving no room for argument. They tried to murder my wife. I want to see their faces when they realize they failed. Rachel considered, then nodded. Fine, but you stay in the van. No interference, no vigilante justice. We do this by the book. Agreed. The arrests happened at dawn. FBI agents moved simultaneously on Vincent Rossi and Marco Rinaldi, taking them into custody before they could destroy evidence or flee. Jerry watched from the surveillance van as Vincent was led out of his mansion in handcuffs, shouting about lawyers and false accusations. It's over, Rachel said, but Jerry shook his head. No, this is just the beginning. Over the next 2 weeks, Jerry provided testimony that dismantled not just Vincent's organization, but all 5 crime families in Chicago. Names, operations, financial structures, everything he'd built and maintained for over a decade, he tore down. Leonard stood by his side through all of it, providing corroboration and additional details. Together, they gave the FBI enough evidence to file over 300 criminal charges against Chicago's criminal elite. You're destroying everything, Leonard said one night as they reviewed documents. Everything your father built. Everything you inherited. I know. Is it worth it? For her? Jerry looked up at his longtime friend and advisor. She was dying, Leonard. Someone in my organization, people I trusted, tried to murder her because they saw her as inconvenient, as an obstacle. He shook his head. If that's what this world creates, if that's what this life produces, then yes, it's worth burning it all down. Leonard was quiet for a long moment. Then, for what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Are you going to be okay? After witness protection, I mean. I'll manage, Leonard smiled faintly. I've been setting aside money for years, under names the FBI doesn't know about. I'll disappear somewhere quiet, and finally read all those books I never had time for. You deserve that. So do you, my friend. While Jerry dismantled his empire, Aurea underwent treatment. Dr. Torres had recommended chelation therapy, a process that would slowly remove the arsenic from her body. It was painful, exhausting, and took months. But gradually, Aurea began to heal. Her energy returned. The tremors stopped. Her hair began growing back. The woman who'd been slowly dying came back to life. Through it all, Jerry was there. Not as the mafia boss, not as the dangerous criminal, but as a man who cared for her with gentle dedication. He brought her meals when she couldn't keep food down. He held her hair back when the treatments made her sick. He sat beside her bed when she was too exhausted to move, and read to her from her favorite books. And slowly, Aurea found herself falling in love with him all over again. Not with the man she'd married, the charming, mysterious entrepreneur who'd hidden his true nature, but with the man he was becoming, honest, devoted, willing to sacrifice everything for her safety. One evening, about 3 months into her treatment, Jerry sat beside her hospital bed reviewing documents for his FBI testimony. "Jerry," she said softly. He looked up immediately. "Do you need something? Water? More blankets?" "I need to talk to you." He set the documents aside, his full attention on her. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I've been thinking about everything that's happened, everything you've done." "Aria, let me finish." She took a deep breath. "When I left you, I was terrified. I thought you were a monster. I thought everything between us had been a lie." She paused. "I was wrong." Jerry's expression was unreadable. "You are a monster," she continued. "Or you were. You did terrible things, hurt people, built an empire on violence and fear, but you were also capable of love, of sacrifice, of changing completely when it mattered most." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I don't know if I can forgive everything you've done. But I can forgive you for lying to me, for hiding who you were, because I understand now. You were trying to protect me from that world, and when I was in danger, you burned that entire world down to save me." Tears were running down her cheeks now. "I love you, Jerry. Not the man I married, but the man you've become. The man who's choosing a different life, a better life. For me, for us." Jerry crossed the distance between them and knelt beside her bed, taking her hands in his. "I love you too," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I've loved you since the day we met, and I'll love you until the day I die. And I swear to you, I swear on everything I have left, I will spend the rest of my life being worthy of that love." Aria pulled him close, and they held each other while the world they'd known crumbled around them, making way for something new. 6 months later, Claire Hoffman and James Mitchell moved into a small cottage in a coastal town in Maine. They weren't Aria and Jerry anymore. Those people had died in Chicago, leaving behind new identities and new lives. Claire taught art classes at the local community center. James worked as a carpenter, building furniture and doing renovations. They were quiet, kept to themselves, and slowly became part of the community. No one in town knew they were in witness protection. No one knew about the Mafia empire that had been destroyed, the criminal trials still ongoing, or the dangerous life they'd left behind. To the residents of Seaport, Maine, they were just another couple starting over. And in a way, they were. "It's strange, isn't it?" Claire said one evening as they sat on their porch watching the sunset. "Being nobody." James squeezed her hand. "Are you happy, being nobody with me?" She thought about it, about the fear she'd lived with for years, about the poison that had nearly killed her, about the violence and danger that had defined Jerry's world. Then she looked at the man beside her, the one who'd given up everything, who'd testified against his closest associates, who'd walked away from wealth and power just to keep her safe. "Yes," she said, "I'm happy." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun sink below the horizon. "I start my MFA program next month," Claire said. "Are you nervous? About me being away 3 days a week? Nervous that you'll realize how boring I am without the whole mafia boss mystique?" James smiled. "Maybe a little." She laughed. "You could never be boring." "Claire," he started, then stopped. "Aria, I need to ask you something." Her breath caught. He almost never used her real name anymore. It was too risky. "What is it?" James reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Claire's heart stopped. "I know we're already legally married," he said. "But that marriage was built on lies. On me hiding who I was, on you not knowing what you were agreeing to. I want to do this right. I want to ask you properly as who we really are now." He opened the box, revealing a simple silver ring. "Claire Hoffman, Aria Damon, will you marry me again, knowing everything about who I was, everything I've done, and choosing me anyway?" Tears streamed down Claire's face. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you. Again." For real this time. He slid the ring onto her finger, and she kissed him with all the love she'd been afraid to admit for so long. They married a month later in a small ceremony on the beach, with just Rachel Kimura and Leonard Briggs, who'd also entered witness protection under a new identity, as witnesses. It wasn't glamorous. There was no expensive venue, no elaborate ceremony, no powerful guests. But it was honest. It was real. And it was theirs. 2 years later, Claire graduated from her MFA program with honors. Her thesis, a series of paintings exploring themes of identity, survival, and rebirth, was featured in a gallery show that drew attention from critics across New England. James stood in the gallery, watching people admire his wife's work, and felt something he hadn't felt in years: pride. Not the pride of power or fear, but the pride of seeing someone you love achieve their dreams. "She's talented," Rachel said, appearing beside him. She visited occasionally, checking on them and providing updates on the ongoing prosecutions in Chicago. "She's incredible," James agreed. "The trials are wrapping up. Vincent got 40 years. Marco got 35. Most of the others got significant sentences, too." "Good. Your testimony made the difference. You know that, right? Without you, we couldn't have built the cases we did." James shrugged. "I'm just glad it's over." "Is it, though?" Rachel looked at him. "You don't miss it? The power? The control?" He thought about the question honestly. Did he miss it? "Sometimes," he admitted. "Sometimes I miss the certainty. The sense that I could fix any problem, control any situation. But then I look at her." He gestured to Claire, who was laughing with a gallery patron, "and I remember what that power cost, what it almost cost me." He turned to Rachel. "I'd rather be nobody with her than somebody without her." Rachel smiled. "You're a better man than I gave you credit for, Jerry Niles." "That's not my name anymore." "I know, but for what it's worth, I think whoever you are now is an improvement." That night, after the gallery show, James and Claire walked along the beach. "Thank you," Claire said suddenly. "For what?" "For everything. For saving my life. For giving up everything you built. For choosing me over all of it." James stopped walking and turned to face her. "Aria, Claire, there was never a choice. From the moment I realized you were being poisoned, every decision was already made. You were always going to be more important than power, money, or status." She kissed him, soft and sweet. "I never thought I'd say this," she murmured against his lips, "but I'm glad you asked that question." "What question?" "That day in the hotel suite, when you looked at me and asked, 'What aren't you telling me?' That question saved my life." James pulled her close. "That question saved both our lives." They stood on the beach, wrapped in each other's arms, while waves crashed around them and the stars glittered overhead. Two people who'd been destroyed by lies, rebuilt by truth, and bound together by a love that had survived poison, betrayal, and the complete annihilation of the world they'd known. And as Claire rested her head on James's chest, listening to his heartbeat, steady and strong, she realized something profound. Sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about finding someone perfect. They're about finding someone willing to burn down their entire world just to keep you in it, and then building something new together from the ashes. If this story moved you, if you felt every twist and turn, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Drop a comment telling me, would you take back someone who destroyed their entire life to save yours? Let's discuss in the comments below. And if you want more intense mafia romance stories with twists that'll leave you breathless, check out these videos next. See you.